Now, no matter how respected a video game property is, there's usually a moment where it drops the ball. Street Fighter is iconic, but it didn't exactly start off great. Every Tony Hawk title was hailed as a masterpiece until the 5th installment absolutely killed the franchise. Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe turned out so badly, the creators had to reboot everything. And even though it's annoying when a game doesn't turn out as well as we hoped, we can't keep expecting perfection, can we? I mean, just because a gaming company has boundless resources, thousands of talented workers, and bottomless wallets, it doesn't guarantee that they'll knock it out of the park every time. But there are a handful of franchises that have never had a dud. For example, every follow-up in God of War improves upon the last. So as hard as it is to believe, there are some video games that have never had a bad entry. And that's what we're here to talk about today. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video game franchises with 0 bad entries. Number 10. Tekken. Now, Tekken may not be as popular as Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, but there's no question that it is more consistent. It may have peaked with Tekken 3, but every entry since has definitely been more than solid. This Namco series has everything you'd expect: accessible and precise controls, awesome combos, and creative movesets. But what makes Tekken stand out is its diverse roster. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate may have a boundless amount of playable characters, but many of them are just clones of another fighter. I mean, seriously, how many Fire Emblem characters do they have now? However, there are few fighting titles, if any, that have a more distinct range of fighters to choose from than Tekken. You can play as a matador, an exorcist, a sumo wrestler, a kangaroo, a wooden man, a panda, or whatever the hell Yoshimitsu is. What's more impressive is Tekken is still pumping out awesome new fighters. Tekken should also be applauded since the unofficial entries like Tag Tournament 1 and 2, Dark Resurrection, and Street Fighter X Tekken turned out way better than they actually should have. So yeah, Tekken, it is the bee's knees. Number 9. The Walking Dead, the TELLTALE series. TELLTALE Games' breakout hit The Walking Dead made a name for itself by focusing on how the player choices altered the narrative. Since the player's decisions changed major components in the story, it's impossible for players not to get emotionally invested, and it also gives you incentive to play multiple times to change who lives or dies. And because of the towering performances, compelling score, and magnificent script, The Walking Dead is bound to stay with you for a long time. However, The Walking Dead isn't higher on this list since it never really tops the one that started it all. Despite the fact that each installment is utterly gripping, it's a clear case of the law of diminishing returns. Although the sequels never lose sight of what made the first entry special, the characters can't exactly match the intensity and the chemistry that the original ensemble had, especially between Lee and Clementine. But that's not suggesting The Walking Dead follow-ups aren't worth checking out, because if you love the first entry and are craving more, well, definitely give this a go. Number 8. Doom. Now, there have been myriad influential first-person shooters, including GoldenEye 007, Half-Life, Counter-Strike, and Unreal Tournament. However, these games would not exist if it weren't for Doom. Doom didn't just popularize the genre, it shook the entire gaming industry up. It reshaped people's perceptions of PC games and made the computer sell like crazy during the 1990s. And because Doom started so well, it felt like John Romero's creation could only go down. After all, when you start on a high like that, where else can you go? But unbelievably, id Software's pride and joy has maintained financial and critical success ever since. Doom 2 may have been more of the same, but there's nothing wrong with that. Doom 3's focus on character development and narrative made the relentless battles with demons even more intense. Doom 2016 was a modern marvel that captured the spirit of the original, and Doom Eternal may be the best one yet. Doom's consistency is all the more impressive, considering that none of the original creators have worked on an official installment since 2004. Even though Doom could have lost steam when John Romero and John Carmack checked out, it is better than ever. Number 7. Yakuza and Like a Dragon. It's horrible to watch a once-adored game series devolve into trash. I mean, when you look at the current state of Sonic the Hedgehog, Postal, or Duke Nukem, it's hard to believe that they were ever met with praise. Fortunately, there are some games like Yakuza that go in the opposite direction, as anyone who's stuck with this crime saga since the beginning has watched it evolve from a decent series into something truly special. And by the 5th entry, even the best game series are usually out of gas, and yet Yakuza has never suffered a wobble despite releasing a dozen titles. What makes this series stand out is how Sega puts 110% into every aspect of each entry, including the minigames. I mean, seriously, you'll probably spend more time disco dancing, bowling, and performing karaoke than playing the main campaign. Although many modern games get criticized for excess filler, here Yakuza's superfluous tasks are a bloody highlight. And even though this list focuses on the main series, Yakuza definitely deserves extra praise, since the games untied to the main narrative are just as entertaining. Whether you're looking at the spin-offs, the remakes, or the remake of a spin-off, Yakuza strikes gold every bloody time. Number 6. Dragon Quest. Although Dragon Quest has been around since 1986, many Westerners aren't actually familiar with the RPG series, and this is baffling considering that Chunsoft/Square Enix's franchise has been made available on almost every console that you can imagine, including the bloody MSX. Dragon Quest should also get more love since it popularized many core mechanics in role players, including turn-based combat, random encounters, and text-based menu systems, and did so a full year before the release of Final Fantasy. Basically, Dragon Quest deserves recognition, not just for its influence, but for its consistency, because no matter which entry you play, you'll experience a sprawling story, beautiful landscapes, catchy tunes, creative combat, easy to pick up mechanics, and epic boss battles. Simply put, Dragon Quest is one of the most dependable franchises, which is definitely staggering after 11 official installments. If you've never played Dragon Quest, don't beat yourself up. Despite its reputation, it's never sold well in the West. Fortunately, the games have become astonishingly popular worldwide in recent years, and considering the most recent sequel, Dragon Quest XI, had the best launch month in history, there's no question that it's finally being recognized on a global scale. The latest entry also received the highest rating in the series, proving that this series has never been stronger. Number 5. Super Smash Bros. Super Smash Bros. Immediately caught everyone's attention, since it enabled up to 4 players to pound each other to pulp whilst playing as iconic Nintendo characters like Mario, Donkey Kong, Kirby, and Pikachu. Now, if HAL Laboratory made a generic fighting title with recognized video game characters, it probably would have still made money purely based on the branding, but creator Masahiro Sakurai wanted Super Smash Bros. To be a game changer, encouraging him to devise a uniquely brilliant fighting system. Instead of depleting your opponent's health bar, the player needed to keep battering their rivals until they're weak enough to hurl off the stage. Even though the controls couldn't be simpler, this mechanic made players focus on strategy, which became a major selling point. Although the first entry was definitely decent, Melee stepped things up a whole gear. More fighters, more attacks, hundreds of collectibles, and most importantly, you could play as Mr. Bloody Game & Watch. And although the story wasn't a big deal at first, Brawl changed everything by giving players a colossal campaign mode. After that, we were given 2 Smash entries simultaneously for the Wii U and 3DS. Shortly after Sakurai apparently stepped away, he brought out the biggest entry yet, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, boasting 89 playable characters, tons of modes, online challenges, and a gargantuan campaign. Ultimate definitely lived up to its name and gave us everything we desired. Number 4. Uncharted. Despite the fact that Uncharted was backed by the company behind Crash Bandicoot and the creator of Soul Reaver, the masses were dubious about this treasure hunting saga, saying that it looked like a rip-off of Tomb Raider, and managing to get itself the unflattering moniker of Dude Raider. Luckily, Uncharted Drake's Fortune won everyone over. Due to the top-notch voice acting, script writing, and chemistry, you saw the characters as people rather than NPCs. The creators hired professional stuntmen instead of regular actors for the physically active sequences to ensure that they looked bombastic and authentic. Although Uncharted set the bar way too high, the series never faltered. Uncharted 2 Among Thieves is amongst the few games to receive a Metacritic score of 96%. Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception was one of the best-selling titles of the PS3. And even though the best franchises can pull a Game of Thrones at the end, just going downhill very quickly, Uncharted 4 A Thief's End was the perfect send-off for our charming hero. There may only be 4 official entries, but that was enough to secure Uncharted's legacy as a flawless franchise. Number 3. God of War. When you think about it, God of War shouldn't really work as a franchise. I mean, gamers were blown away by the first game due to the over-the-top action, relentless bloodshed, screen-filling bosses, and ruthless kill sequences, which may sound fun, but gamers would have definitely tired of it if the sequels just tossed out more of the same. And although God of War could have been a brainless but still entertaining hack and slash, the developers decided that the game should focus on story above all else. As ridiculous as the violence gets, God of War gets away with it just because it never loses sight of Kratos' journey, or his desires, or his redemption arc. And after God of War 3 and Ascension, it looked like the Ghost of Sparta's story had finally come to an end. So when the developers announced a reboot/sequel revolving around Norse gods and a more humane Kratos, die-hard fans were actually, surprisingly, against it. Even though reboots tend to land flat on their face, 2018's God of War was an utter triumph. Turning the story into a character study allowed the player to get into Kratos' head, giving the player a much richer experience. And yes, there is enough blood and guts to satiate veterans of the series, but it was Kratos and his relationship with his son that kept us all enthralled. If the third entry was the final installment, God of War would have been regarded as a great trilogy, but after the last 2 sequels surpassed our wildest expectations, the series is now hailed as an utter masterpiece. Number 2. Super Mario. Okay, there's no way you can discuss consistent game franchises without bringing up Nintendo's mustachioed mascot. In fact, Super Mario might be the first consistent gaming property ever, and the suspiciously nimble plumber should be championed not just for his stability over the years, but his ability to repeatedly revolutionize the industry. Super Mario Bros. Popularized 2D side-scrollers. Super Mario 64 showcased 3D platformers were the way of the future. Super Mario Kart proved that spin-offs didn't have to be cash grabs, and could be just as good as the game that they spawned from. Although Super Mario Bros. 2 and Super Mario Sunshine are regarded as the bad entries, let's be honest, nothing could be further from the truth. They may be the nadir of the series, but Super Mario Bros. 2 and Sunshine are still great games in their own right. The fact that amazing titles like these are considered the weak ones just goes to show how highly the franchise is regarded. And while we're not sure when the next official Mario sequel will be released, it will almost certainly be a surefire hit. And number 1, The Legend of Zelda. In its time, the original Legend of Zelda was regarded as a work of perfection, with its variety of enemies to face, puzzles to solve, secrets to discover, dungeons to open, and treasures to find. Nintendo's open-world adventure was a wonder to behold. And astoundingly, The Legend of Zelda has maintained its Nintendo's reputation since. And just remember, the Philips CDI games do not actually count. Nintendo just farted out the license to the CDI, so I'm not counting them. And although Link's Awakening and A Link to the Past were fantastic follow-ups, Ocarina of Time was considered the apex of the industry. Now, some entries are clearly better than others, but there's no moment where the franchise actually stumbles. What's more bizarre, though, is that Zelda seems to get better with age. Majora's Mask and Wind Waker had their fair share of naysayers at the time, and yet are now regarded as amongst the strongest entries. Hell, people are finally starting to realize that they were way too harsh on Zelda 2. Seriously, it's actually quite fun. And then there's Breath of the Wild. Never in history has the series pushed boundaries more while still maintaining the spirit of the original. Although we don't know what to expect from the next installment, Tears of the Kingdom, it's sure to live up to the Legend of Zelda mantle. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 video game franchises with 0 bad entries. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Instagram at RetroJ, but the O is a 0, and I hope to see you over there, my friends. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. Hope you're treating yourself well, my friend, with love and respect, because sometimes it can feel like we're having a bit of a bad entry in our life log. But just remember, bad things like this, they tend to pass in time. And remember, you're not alone. You've got friends, you've got family, you've got professionals in the support industry, and people who care about you and want you to do well. So if you feel like you're at a low point, just remember, there are people out there that will hype you up to the nines and remind you that you are a massive ledge. Now get out there and smash it, my friend. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.